What happens when a lie is more powerful than a heartbeat? For Isabel Sterling, her husband's name was a shield, a promise of a perfect life carved in gold and whispered in the most exclusive circles of London. She had the mansion, the glamour, and the one thing she'd always dreamed of: a child growing within her, a true heir to the Sterling fortune. But in the shadows of their perfect world, a venomous whisper was taking root. A mistress, a lie about a phantom pregnancy, and a husband blinded by betrayal. This isn't a story about a simple affair. It's the story of how a millionaire, in a single devastating act, chose to believe a calculated deception and threw his genuinely pregnant wife out into the cold, unforgiving night. Prepare yourselves, because the truth is always more shocking than the lie. The Sterling residence, a palatial white stucco mansion overlooking Regent's Park, was less a home and more a monument to Damien Sterling's success. Its gardens were meticulously sculpted. Its windows gleamed like polished diamonds, and inside the air itself seemed to hum with the quiet, confident thrum of immense wealth. Damien, at 34, was the architect of this empire, the CEO of Sterling Innovations, a tech conglomerate that had disrupted global logistics. He was sharp, decisive, and possessed a charisma that could command a boardroom or charm a princess with equal ease. His wife Isabel was the mansion's soul. She was not the product of a corporate merger or a social climbing family. She was a former art historian whose quiet intelligence and gentle grace had captivated Damien 5 years prior. She moved through the cavernous rooms not as a conqueror, but as a caretaker, replacing the coldness of marble with the warmth of fresh flowers and the echo of a kind word to the staff. To the outside world, they were the perfect couple: power and grace, ambition and heart. For weeks, Isabel had been holding a secret, a precious, fragile thing she kept wrapped in silent joy. She was pregnant. After 2 years of quiet hope and hushed disappointments, the confirmation from her doctor felt like the sun breaking through a perpetual fog. She planned to tell Damien on their anniversary, to present him with a tiny pair of hand-knitted booties she'd hidden in her wardrobe, a tangible promise of the future he claimed he wanted. The first tremor in her perfect world was subtle, a name spoken with a little too much frequency. Chloe Vance. Chloe closed the Hong Kong deal, Damien would announce over dinner, his eyes fixed on his phone. She's a killer. Absolutely ruthless. Chloe reorganized the PR division. The board is thrilled, he'd mention as they dressed for a gala. She thinks 3 steps ahead of everyone. Isabel pictured this Chloe as a sharp-shouldered, severe woman in a power suit. She felt a prickle of professional admiration for her, a woman succeeding in her husband's cutthroat world. She never imagined her as a threat, because in Isabel's world, love and loyalty were the bedrock upon which everything else was built. The first time she met Chloe was at a company charity gala held at the Victoria and Albert Museum. Isabel, radiant in a deep sapphire gown that subtly disguised the very beginnings of her new secret, was standing by Damien's side. He was mid-flow describing a new AI venture to a cluster of investors when a woman glided up to them. She wasn't severe at all. Chloe Vance was stunning, with a mane of fiery red hair, eyes the color of jade, and a smile that was both dazzling and predatory. She wore a backless emerald dress that seemed poured onto her statuesque frame. "Isabel, darling," Damien said, turning with a brilliant smile. "This is the miracle worker I've been telling you about. Chloe Vance. Chloe, my wife, Isabel. Chloe's eyes swept over Isabel in a fraction of a second, a flicker of assessment that was so quick, Isabel almost missed it. But she didn't. It was the way a predator sizes up its prey. "It is an absolute honor to finally meet you." Chloe purred, her voice a low, husky melody. She extended a hand, her long, crimson nails brushing against Isabel's skin. "Damien speaks so highly of you. He says you're his anchor." The word anchor sounded less like a compliment and more like a weight. Isabel smiled graciously, a lifetime of decorum kicking in. "It's lovely to meet you too, Chloe. Damien is very proud of the work you're doing." Throughout the evening, Isabel watched her. Chloe was a master of her craft. She orbited Damien, never too close, never too far. She'd lean in to whisper a comment, her hand briefly touching his arm. She would laugh at his jokes with a fervor that felt just a little too practiced. To everyone else, she was the perfect deferential employee. To Isabel, a cold knot of dread began to tighten in her stomach. It was a feeling she couldn't name, an intuition she couldn't prove. Later that week, the dread was given a name. Damien came home late, smelling of expensive whiskey and a faint, unfamiliar perfume, a heady scent of jasmine and spice. He was tired, he said, a brutal day of negotiations. As he took off his jacket, something small and silver fell from his pocket, clattering onto the marble floor of their dressing room. Isabel bent down to pick it up. It was a single earring, a delicate modern design of a silver serpent. She'd seen its twin dangling from Chloe Vance's ear at the gala. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She held it up. "Damien, what is this?" He glanced at it, his expression unreadable. "Oh, that must be Chloe's. We were all working late in the conference room. She must have dropped it. I'll have my assistant return it tomorrow." His explanation was smooth, plausible, but the ease with which he said it, the lack of surprise, sent a shard of ice through Isabel's veins. He didn't meet her eyes. He just walked into the shower, leaving her standing there, the silver serpent feeling like a brand in her palm, its cold metal a stark contrast to the warm, living secret she held in her womb. The lie had been born, and Isabel, standing in her gilded cage, was about to find out how easily its golden bars could be bent into a weapon. The discovery of the earring shifted the atmosphere in the Sterling mansion from one of quiet luxury to one of tense, unspoken suspicion. Isabel tried to dismiss it, to tell herself she was being paranoid, hormonal even. But the seed of doubt, once planted, began to sprout insidious roots. Chloe's name was no longer just a mention of professional success. It became a constant, invasive presence. Damien's phone, once left casually on the nightstand, was now perpetually screen down. He had emergency late-night calls that required him to step out onto the balcony, his voice a low, urgent murmur carried away by the London wind. Business trips to Zurich and Singapore were added to his calendar at the last minute, trips Chloe was also coincidentally required to attend. Chloe, for her part, began a campaign of subtle, psychological warfare. One afternoon, a bouquet of exotic blood-red orchids arrived at the house. The card, in a flamboyant script, read, "To the Sterling home, a little something to brighten the place up. We all work so hard to keep it running. CV." It was a power play disguised as a gift, a declaration that she too was a pillar of Damien's world. Isabel quietly told the housekeeper to put them in a distant guest room. The gaslighting was masterful. When Isabel, her voice trembling slightly, asked Damien why he was so distant, he would look at her with feigned concern. "Distant, darling. I'm closing the biggest merger of my career. I'm under immense pressure. I need your support, not accusations." When she mentioned the constant texts he received at all hours, he sighed with exasperation. "It's a global business, Isabel. It's 9 a.m. in Tokyo. Do you want me to just switch off? Chloe is managing the Asian markets for me. She has to keep me updated." He made her feel needy, paranoid, and worst of all, ungrateful. He was building an empire for them, he insisted. Why couldn't she see that meanwhile, Isabel's pregnancy was progressing? Morning sickness became a daily reality, a wave of nausea that she had to hide, attributing it to a migraine or a bad oyster. She hadn't yet told Damien. The perfect, joyful moment she had envisioned was gone, replaced by a gnawing anxiety. How could she bring a child into a home where its own mother felt like an intruder? The breaking point came during a weekend they were meant to spend at their country estate in the Cotswolds. It was their anniversary. Isabel had packed the tiny booties, determined to reclaim their relationship, to remind him of the life they had promised to build together. On Friday afternoon, as she was about to call their driver, Damien walked into the library, his face a mask of regret. "Darling, I'm so sorry." He began, the words already sounding hollow. "Something's come up. A massive server breach at the Frankfurt office. It's all hands on deck. I have to fly out tonight." Isabel's heart sank. "Tonight, Damien? It's our anniversary weekend." "I know, and I feel terrible. Believe me, I'd rather be with you." He walked over and kissed her forehead, a gesture that felt more like a formality than an act of affection. "Chloe is already at the airport, sorting out the logistics with the German team. I have to go." The casual mention of her name was like a slap. "Of course, Chloe is there." Damien's eyes hardened. "What is that supposed to mean?" "She's my senior VP. Her job is to handle crises. Are we really going to do this again, Isabel?" "Right now." Defeated, she just shook her head. "No, go. Save your company." He left. The house fell silent, vast and empty. That evening, Isabel sat alone in their cavernous dining room, the chef's celebratory meal untouched. She scrolled through her phone, a masochistic impulse guiding her fingers to a popular high society Instagram blog. And there it was, a spotted post. A grainy photo taken within the last hour from inside the exclusive private terminal at Heathrow. It showed two figures boarding a private jet. Damien, his arm casually draped around the shoulders of a woman with unmistakable fiery red hair. They were laughing. The caption read, "Tech mogul Damien Sterling and a mystery redhead off for a romantic getaway. Looks like business is booming." The phone slipped from her numb fingers and clattered onto the table. There was no server breach in Frankfurt. The only thing in crisis was her marriage, the Cotswolds, their anniversary, their future. It was all a lie to facilitate a weekend away with his mistress. A wave of nausea more violent than any morning sickness washed over her. But this time it was followed by a walled-hard clarity. The intuition she'd tried to suppress, the whispers she'd tried to ignore. It was all real. She was not paranoid. She was being played for a fool. She walked upstairs, her steps heavy, with a grief so profound it felt like a physical weight. She opened her wardrobe and took out the small, beautifully wrapped box. She untied the silk ribbon and lifted the lid. The tiny cream-colored booties lay nestled in tissue paper, a symbol of a future that now felt like a cruel joke. Tears finally streamed down her face, hot and silent. She was alone in a house that no longer felt like a home, pregnant with the child of a man who was at that very moment in the arms of another woman. The serpent's whisper had become a roar, and it had devoured her world whole. Damien returned from his crisis in Frankfurt, looking refreshed and triumphant. He presented Isabel with an expensive diamond bracelet from a boutique in Geneva, a guilt offering she accepted with a quiet, hollow thank you. She said nothing of the photo. Confronting him felt futile. She was gathering her thoughts, trying to figure out what to do, not just for herself, but for the tiny life she was carrying. She needed a plan, not a screaming match. Her silence, however, was misinterpreted by Damien as acquiescence. To him, the storm had passed. For Chloe, it was the perfect opportunity to launch her final, devastating assault. The attack came on a Tuesday evening. Damien was home, a rarity. They were having a tense, mostly silent dinner when his phone buzzed. It was a text. He glanced at it, and the color drained from his face. He stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the marble floor. "I have to go out," he said, his voice strained. "Another crisis?" Isabel asked, her tone flat. "Yes. Something personal. I'll be back later." He was gone before she could say another word. He didn't come home until 3 a.m. He looked shattered. His suit rumpled, his face etched with a mixture of horror and something else. A grim, conflicted responsibility. He found Isabel waiting up for him in their bedroom, a book lying unread in her lap. He didn't apologize for the hour. He just stood at the foot of the bed and said the words that would detonate their lives. "It's Chloe," he said, his voice raspy. "Isabel. She's pregnant." The world tilted on its axis. Isabel stared at him, sure she had misheard. "What? She's pregnant?" he repeated, running a hand through his hair distractedly. "She told me tonight. She's about 8 weeks along. She's terrified. She didn't want to tell me. She didn't want to ruin this." He gestured vaguely at the opulent room at their life. Isabel felt a hysterical laugh bubble in her chest, but it came out as a strangled gasp. "She's pregnant. After your business trip to Frankfurt." It happened before that. He snapped, his guilt manifesting as anger. "It was a mistake. A couple of times after we worked late. It was meaningless, Isabel, I swear. It just happened. A meaningless mistake now has a heartbeat, apparently." She shot back, the sarcasm dripping with pain. Damien flinched. He started pacing, the frantic energy of a trapped animal. She was going to handle it on her own. She never wanted to be a problem. But she had a scare tonight, some cramping. She went to the hospital. Everything is okay, but the doctor, it made it all real for her. She broke down. She felt she had to tell me. Every word was a carefully rehearsed line fed to him by a master manipulator. Chloe had laid the perfect trap. The scare, the reluctance, the breakdown. It was all designed to make him feel like her protector, to paint her as a tragic, vulnerable victim. And then Chloe delivered her masterpiece of deception. The next day, Damien sat Isabel down in their sunroom, a place where they used to read the Sunday papers together. He looked like a judge about to deliver a death sentence. "Chloe wanted you to see this," he said, sliding a photograph across the glass table. "She wants to be transparent." Isabel picked it up. It was a sonogram, a grainy black and white image of a tiny bean-shaped fetus. The top corner of the printout had a name, C. Vance, and a date from the previous evening. Isabel stared at it. Her own first sonogram picture was tucked away in her bedside table drawer. It looked so similar. It was the universal image of early life. But this one felt like a forgery, a desecration. It was a lie printed on thermal paper. Chloe had likely downloaded a stock image from the internet and paid a graphic designer a paltry sum to Photoshop her name onto it. It was a simple, brutally effective deception. "She feels terrible about this, Damien said, using her old pet name, a desperate attempt to soften the blow. "She knows she's destroyed everything. She even suggested she could go away, have the baby somewhere else, and I could support them from a distance." The calculated magnanimity of the offer was Chloe's checkmate. It made her seem noble, self-sacrificing. It was designed to make Damien say what he said next. "But I can't do that," he said, his jaw tight. "I can't let my child grow up without a father. I caused this. I have to take responsibility." Isabel looked from the fake sonogram to her husband's tormented face. He was completely ensnared. Chloe hadn't just seduced him. She had colonized his conscience. He saw himself as a man of honor, forced to do the right thing in a terrible situation. He didn't see the puppeteer pulling his strings. She felt a sudden, profound calm. The shock had given way to a chilling resolve. The game was no longer about saving her marriage. It was about survival. "And what does taking responsibility look like, Damien?" she asked, her voice steady, devoid of the tears he expected. He looked at her, and for the first time she saw the cold, hard calculation in his eyes. The CEO was back. He was managing a crisis, and she was now a liability. "I don't know yet," he said, "but things are going to have to change." Isabel knew exactly what that meant. The phantom pregnancy had done its work. It had created a phantom heir, and in the Sterling Empire there was only room for one. The days that followed were a cold war fought in the silent, opulent corridors of the mansion. Damien treated Isabel with a detached, clinical politeness that was more chilling than any argument. He was an executive managing a hostile takeover of his own life, and she was the asset being liquidated. He had lawyers on the phone at all hours, their hushed conversations about settlements and non-disclosure agreements drifting from his study. Chloe, meanwhile, was nowhere and everywhere. She didn't come to the house, but her presence was a toxic miasma. There were florist deliveries of funereal white lilies, Chloe's favorite, and calls that Damien would take with a pained, "I'm with Isabel right now. I'll call you back," a performance of sensitivity that was purely for his own benefit. Isabel knew her time was running out. The lie was solidifying, hardening into an accepted truth in Damien's mind. Her own truth, her own secret, felt fragile and powerless against it. She had to tell him. It was her last desperate card to play. She chose a Thursday night. A storm was brewing over London, the sky a bruised purple. The dramatic fallacy was not lost on her. She found Damien in his study, a glass of amber liquid in his hand, staring out at the city lights. "Damien, we need to talk," she said, her voice stronger than she felt. "Not with lawyers, not about settlements. About us." He turned his face weary. "Isabel, there's nothing left to say. My lawyers will be in touch with yours. I will be generous. You will be comfortable for the rest of your life." "I don't want your money," she said, stepping closer. "I want my husband, the man I married. The man who would never believe a lie like this." "A lie?" He let out a short, bitter laugh. "I've seen the sonogram, Isabel. I was with her at the hospital. This is real." "The hospital you took her to after she called you with her scare," Isabel countered. "Did you sit in the examination room with her? Did you speak to the doctor yourself? Or did you wait in the hallway while she crafted her story?" He faltered for a second, a flicker of doubt in his eyes before it was extinguished by his own guilt. "Stop it. You're just trying to twist this." "No," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "I'm trying to tell you the truth. Chloe is not the only one with news, Damien." This was it. She took a deep breath, her hand instinctively going to her still flat stomach. "I'm pregnant, Damien." The words hung in the air between them. The only sound was the distant rumble of thunder. Damien stared at her, his expression slowly shifting from weary frustration to cold, disbelieving fury. "What did you just say?" he whispered. "I'm pregnant," she repeated, her voice gaining strength. "I'm 12 weeks along. I was going to tell you on our anniversary before all this. I have the doctor's report. I have my own sonogram." She saw the flicker of hope in his eyes, a desperate desire to believe her. But Chloe's poison had seeped too deep. The lie was a fortress, and her truth was a pebble thrown against its walls. He shook his head slowly, a cruel, pitying smile twisting his lips. "Wow. I have to hand it to you, Isabel. That's quite a move. Desperate, but clever." The condescension in his voice stole her breath. "Move? You think this is a move? This is our child, Damien. Our child!" he roared, his control finally snapping. He slammed his glass down on the desk, whiskey sloshing over the polished wood. Don't you dare use that to try and trap me." Chloe gets pregnant by accident, and you suddenly, miraculously, are pregnant too. What a coincidence. Did you run out and fake a sonogram this afternoon after my lawyer called? The accusation was so vile, so far beyond the pale, that Isabel felt a wave of dizziness. He was comparing her to Chloe, accusing her of the very deception she was a victim of. "How dare you?" she whispered, tears of rage and heartbreak finally spilling down her cheeks. "I have loved you. I have stood by you. And you stand there and accuse me of something so monstrous. I'm accusing you of being a liar," he shouted, his face contorted. "Chloe, for all her faults, was honest with me. She was terrified, but she told the truth. You're trying to fight her, lie with a bigger lie, and I won't have it." The thunder cracked directly overhead, and the heavens opened. Rain began to lash against the window panes, a torrent of nature's fury mirroring the destruction inside. "I want you out," Damien said, his voice dropping to a low, lethal command. "I want you out of this house. Tonight." "What?" Isabel gasped, stumbling back. "Damien. No, it's pouring with rain. Where would I go?" "I don't care," he said, his eyes as cold and hard as granite. He turned his back on her, staring out at the storm. "Go to a hotel. Go to your parents. Go to hell for all I care. Just get out of my sight. My security team will escort you. Pack a bag. You have 30 minutes. He didn't look at her again. The finality in his voice was absolute. There was no appeal, no reprieve. The man who had vowed to love and protect her was casting her out into a storm, believing she was a liar and a fraud. Numbly, Isabel walked out of the study and up the grand staircase. Two stoic men in dark suits, members of Damien's personal security detail, were already waiting in the hallway. They watched her with impassive eyes as she walked into her bedroom and pulled out a suitcase. She packed mechanically a few clothes, her toiletries the file from her obstetrician, containing the proof of her pregnancy, and the small box with the baby booties. She was weeping, but her sobs were silent, her body shaking with a grief too profound for sound. 30 minutes later, she was standing at the grand entrance of her home. One of the security guards held an umbrella over her. The other had placed her single suitcase on the rain-slicked driveway. Damien was nowhere to be seen. He hadn't even afforded her the decency of a final glance. The heavy oak door clicked shut behind her, the sound echoing with terrifying finality. She was Isabel Sterling no more. She was just a woman alone in the rain with a broken heart and a secret child that her own husband refused to believe was real. As she stood there shivering in the deluge, she made a vow. She would not break. She would survive this. And she would bring her child into the world, a world far away from the poisonous lies of the House of Sterling. The taxi's headlights cut through the relentless curtain of rain, the wipers fighting a losing battle. Isabel gave the driver the only address that came to mind, a small flat in Camden. It was a world away from Regent's Park, a world of brick facades, bustling markets, and the comforting anonymity of ordinary life. It was the home of Maria Flores, her closest friend. Maria, a fiery and fiercely loyal journalist, whom Isabel had known since university, opened the door in her pajamas, her eyes widening in shock at the sight of her drenched, heart-broken friend standing on her doorstep with a single suitcase. "Izzy, my God, what happened?" The dam of Isabel's composure broke. In the warmth of Maria's tiny living room, surrounded by stacks of books and the smell of brewed coffee, she collapsed into her friend's arms and told her everything. The affair, the lies, the phantom pregnancy, the sonogram, and finally the brutal expulsion. When she finished, her voice raw, Maria was radiating a cold fury. That monster. I'm going to write an exposé that will strip him bare. Sterling Innovations will be Sterling in ruins when I'm done with him." "No," Isabel whispered, wiping her eyes. "Not yet. A public fight is what he understands. It's what Chloe would do. I can't think about that now." Then, taking a shaky breath, she revealed the one part of the story that mattered most. "He kicked me out because he thinks I lied to trap him. Maria, I'm pregnant. For real." Maria's anger instantly melted into profound concern. She pulled Isabel into another hug, this one fiercely protective. "Okay," she said, her voice firm. "Okay, this changes everything. Forget him. Forget the mansion and the money. This is about you and this baby now. You're safe here. This is your home." The days that followed blurred into a haze of grief and adjustment. The opulence of her former life was stripped away, replaced by the humble reality of Maria's flat. The king-sized bed was replaced by a pull-out sofa. The walk-in closet became a small corner of Maria's wardrobe. The personal chef was replaced by take-out cartons, and Maria's well-intentioned but often burnt attempts at cooking. Yet in this small space, Isabel found something she hadn't had in the mansion for months: safety. She spent the first week in a fog, but Maria was a relentless force of nature. She made sure Isabel ate, forced her on walks through Camden Market, and steadfastly refused to let her drown in sorrow. One morning, Maria came home from a meeting and threw a file onto the coffee table. "Right. First things first. We need to secure you. I called in a favor with a friend who works in family law. She's the best. We need to document everything. Your pregnancy, his assets, Chloe's ridiculously transparent lies. We fight him with facts, Izzy, not with tears." The lawyer, a sharp, empathetic woman named Anya, met with Isabel the next day. For the first time, Isabel laid out her proof. Her doctor's reports, her own sonogram, dated weeks before Chloe's supposed revelation, a timeline of Damien's business trips. Anya listened, her expression growing more resolute with every word. He hasn't just abandoned his pregnant wife, Anya stated, her voice grim. He has inflicted extreme emotional distress based on a provable fraud. Isabel, when you're ready, we can make him pay for this. But for now, your health and the baby's health are the priority. The process of disentanglement was brutal. Damien's lawyers sent over a settlement offer. It was, as he promised, generous, a lump sum that would keep her in luxury for life, contingent on her signing an ironclad NDA that would prevent her from ever speaking about Damien Chloe or the circumstances of their separation. It was hush money designed to erase her from his history. Looking at the document, something inside Isabel hardened. The soft, forgiving woman who had curated art and arranged flowers was being forged into something new in the fires of her betrayal. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about her child, a child Damien had disowned based on a lie. "I'm not signing it," she told Anya. "Are you sure?" Anya asked gently. "It's a lot of money, Isabel. Security." "It's not security, it's a gag," Isabel replied, her voice clear and firm. "He doesn't get to buy my silence. He doesn't get to erase his child, reject the offer, all of it." She began to build a new life, a small and quiet one. She used the last of her personal savings money from before her marriage to pay her way. She found a new obstetrician in her neighborhood, a kind, motherly woman who knew nothing of the sterling name and simply called her Isabel. Hearing her own name unburdened by his felt like a quiet liberation. She and Maria would talk late into the night. Maria, the journalist, was convinced Chloe's lie had a fatal flaw. "Pregnancies have a deadline, Izzy. 9 months. What's her plan?" A convenient miscarriage in a few months. A premature birth of a doll. The lie is unsustainable. We just have to wait for it to collapse. As her own belly began to show a small, definite curve replacing the flat stomach of her past, Isabel's resolve solidified into steel. Every flutter she felt inside her was a reminder of her truth. Damien could have his empire, his mistress, and his lie. She had something infinitely more real. One afternoon, while walking by a small park, she saw a father pushing his daughter on a swing. The girl's laughter echoed in the crisp autumn air. A pang of sorrow hit her, a vision of the family she was supposed to have. But then she placed a hand on her stomach. The sorrow was quickly replaced by a fierce, primal protectiveness. She would be that father and that mother. She would be enough. The world had taken her husband, her home, and her name. It could not take her strength. It could not take her child. While Isabel was building a new life from the ashes of her old one, Chloe Vance was living a fantasy. She had moved into the Sterling mansion, a triumphant conqueror. She wore Isabel's robes, hosted dinner parties with Damien's business associates, and played the part of the tragic, glowing mother-to-be to perfection. She complained of morning sickness, though the staff noticed she had a hearty appetite in private. She redecorated what was to be the nursery in bold, garish colors that grated on the mansion's quiet elegance. She carried her fake sonogram picture in her wallet, ready to whip it out at the slightest provocation. Damien, consumed by guilt and a desperate need to do the right thing, catered to her every whim. He bought her extravagant gifts, hired a personal nutritionist, and spoke about their child with a forced, almost frantic enthusiasm. But beneath the surface, a seed of unease was beginning to sprout in his own mind. He had loved Isabel's quiet strength and intelligence. Chloe's constant drama and insatiable need for attention were beginning to wear on him. The first major crack in Chloe's story appeared via an unlikely source, Damien's mother, Eleanor Sterling. Eleanor was a formidable woman, old money personified. She was shrewd observant and had never been particularly fond of Chloe's naked ambition. She had adored Isabel. When Damien told her his version of the story that Isabel had lied about a pregnancy to trap him after he'd honorably confessed to fathering Chloe's child, Eleanor had remained silent, her expression unreadable. She invited Damien and a delicately conditioned Chloe to Sunday lunch at Claridge's, her preferred bastion of tradition and discretion. The lunch was a masterclass in subtle interrogation. "You must be so thrilled, Chloe." Eleanor began, her diamond earrings glittering. "A first grandchild is such a blessing. Have you chosen a hospital? I have an excellent man on Harley Street. He delivered all the royal babies you know." Chloe, momentarily flustered, replied, "Oh, we have someone. A wonderful doctor. Very private." "Of course," Eleanor said smoothly. "And the morning sickness, you poor dear. Is it dreadful? Awful?" Chloe sighed, placing a hand on her perfectly flat stomach. "I can barely keep anything down." She then proceeded to order the lobster thermidor and a side of truffle fries. Eleanor's gaze sharpened. Later, as they were leaving, Eleanor took Damien's arm. "She seems remarkably robust for someone so afflicted," she commented dryly. "And for someone supposedly 4 months pregnant, she doesn't seem to have told her tailor. That dress is this season's couture, and it's a perfect sample size." Damien dismissed it as his mother's typical frostiness, but the comment lingered. The lie began to truly unravel a month later. Chloe knew she was approaching the point where her pregnancy would have to become visually obvious. She started stuffing small cushions under her clothes, a clumsy attempt to create a baby bump. The effect was lumpy and unconvincing. The household staff, loyal to the memory of Isabel's kindness, began to whisper. The fatal mistake came from Chloe's own arrogance. Convinced she had everyone fooled, she became careless. She needed a dramatic event, something to cement her status and perhaps rush a wedding. She decided to stage a tragic miscarriage. One evening she called Damien in a panic. "The cramping is back. It's bad. Damien, really bad." He rushed home to find her collapsed at the bottom of the grand staircase, weeping hysterically. I think I'm losing the baby," she sobbed. He scooped her up and raced her to the hospital, the one she had pre-selected. After a frantic hour in the waiting room, a grim-faced Chloe emerged with a doctor who delivered the devastating news that they had lost the baby. Damien was genuinely heartbroken. The phantom child had become real in his mind, a symbol of his mistake and his chance at redemption. He held a weeping Chloe, comforting her, feeling the weight of the tragedy. But Eleanor Sterling was not heartbroken. She was suspicious. A fall down the stairs. A convenient miscarriage, just as the pregnancy should have been showing. It was all too theatrical. Too neat. Without telling Damien, she made a phone call. The next day, a discreet private investigator, a former MI6 agent she kept on retainer for family matters, began to look into one Chloe Vance. The results came back a week later in a slim, devastating file. The PI had been thorough. The hospital Chloe had gone to for her initial scare had no record of a Chloe Vance being admitted for pregnancy-related issues that night. She had simply walked into the A&E, complained of stomach pain, and left an hour later. The doctor who had delivered the news of the miscarriage was not an OB-GYN. He was a junior resident in dermatology, who it turned out was Chloe's cousin. The PI had tracked down the graphic designer, who for $200 had expertly photoshopped Chloe's name and a date onto a stock sonogram image she'd downloaded from the internet. Most damning of all, The investigator had accessed flight manifests. The emergency trip to Frankfurt, the private jet, had not flown to Germany. Its flight plan, paid for on Damien's corporate account, was a round trip to the Maldives. Eleanor read the report in her silent, sunlit drawing room, her tea growing cold. The sheer audacity, the cold-blooded cruelty of the deception was breathtaking. That evening, she summoned Damien to her townhouse. She didn't speak. She simply handed him the file. He read it, his face turning from confusion to disbelief, then to a sickening ashen white. He saw the flight plan to the Maldives, a romantic trip disguised as a work crisis. He saw the invoice from the graphic designer for the ultrasound. He saw the interview with the dermatologist cousin. The entire edifice of his new life, built on a foundation of guilt and honor, crumbled into dust. He wasn't the protector of a wronged woman. He was the gullible fool in a con artist's masterpiece. The lie about Chloe's pregnancy was exposed. And in that horrifying moment of clarity, a far more terrible truth crashed down on him. With the force of a physical blow, Isabel had been telling the truth. He had thrown his own pregnant wife, the woman who had only ever loved him, out into the night. He had called her a liar, a manipulator, and had abandoned her and their unborn child based on a cheap, cruel fiction. The weight of his own monstrous actions crushed him. He sank into a chair, the file slipping from his nerveless fingers, the sound of his own ragged breath filling the silent room. He had lost everything, and it was no one's fault but his own. The drive back to the Regent's Park mansion was a blur of self-loathing for Damien. Every street lamp illuminated his foolishness. Every shadow seemed to mock his blindness. He walked into the house not as its master, but as a man returning to the scene of a terrible crime. He found Chloe in the drawing room, sipping champagne and flipping through a catalogue of ridiculously expensive baby furniture, a macabre postscript to her fabricated tragedy. She was playing the part of the grieving mother, but her eyes held a spark of triumph. She believed she was now unassailable, permanently bonded to him through their shared loss. "Darling," she began, a pout on her lips. "I was thinking maybe for the nursery, even though it would be nice to have it ready for when we try again." Damien looked at her. Truly looked at her for the first time, without the filter of guilt. He saw the greed in her eyes, the hard, calculating lines of her face. He saw the predator, and he felt nothing but disgust. He tossed the investigator's file onto the coffee table in front of her. It landed with a heavy thud. "Frankfurt, Chloe?" he asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "Or was the weather better in the Maldives?" Chloe froze the champagne flute halfway to her lips. Her eyes darted to the file, and the color drained from her face. She knew instantly that the game was over. I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered, her voice losing its sultry confidence. "Oh, I think you do." Damien continued, the fury building in him, cold and precise. "I think you know all about the graphic designer you paid to fake a sonogram. You know about your dermatologist cousin at the hospital. You know that you were never, ever pregnant." He leaned, in his voice a venomous whisper. "You played me. You destroyed my marriage, my life, based on a lie. You let me throw my wife, my pregnant wife, out of her home." Chloe's composure shattered. The mask of sophistication fell away to reveal a desperate, cornered creature. "I did it because I love you," she shrieked, her voice shrill. "She didn't appreciate you. She was an anchor holding you back. I was trying to set you free. Love." Damien laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. "You don't know the meaning of the word. You love my name, my money. You saw a life you wanted, and you decided to burn down anyone who stood in your way. He stood up straight. Get out. What? She gasped. Get your things. Everything you came with. Nothing more. My security will watch you pack. I want you out of this house, out of my company, and out of my life within the hour. If I ever see your face or hear your name again, I will release this file to every news outlet in the country. I will sue you for fraud. I will destroy you so completely you won't be able to get a job cleaning toilets. Now get out. Her face contorted in a mask of pure hatred. She scrambled from the room. Damien was left alone, standing in the silent monument to his own stupidity. The victory was ashes in his mouth. Getting rid of Chloe was easy. The real reckoning was yet to come. His first frantic call was to Isabel's parents. They informed him in glacial tones that they had not heard from their daughter since the day she left him, and had no idea where she was. His next calls were to her old friends, the few whose numbers he had. They either hung up on him or told him they had no intention of helping him. He was a pariah. He had been so insulated in his world of wealth, he had no idea how to find a person who didn't want to be found. He hired his own private investigator, a different one with a single desperate instruction. Find Isabel. For weeks, there was nothing. It was as if she had vanished from the face of the earth. Damien lived in a state of torment, haunted by the memory of her face as he'd accused her of lying. He wandered the empty rooms of the mansion, each one a testament to her absence. He saw her ghost everywhere in the garden she had loved, in the library, where she used to read, in the curve of the staircase where Chloe had staged her pathetic drama. Then, after nearly a month of searching, the investigator called. I've found her. Damien's heart leapt. Where is she? Is she okay? Well, she's not in London, the investigator said carefully. She's in a small coastal town in Cornwall, Porthleven. She's been living a very quiet life. There was a pause. There's something else you should know, Mr. Sterling. It seems she's not alone. What do you mean? Damien asked, a new cold dread creeping in. Is she with someone? In a manner of speaking, the investigator replied. According to my local sources, she suffered a health scare about a month ago, some complication with the pregnancy. She was helped by a local GP, a Dr. Ben Carter. He's been looking after her since. They've become close. He's a widower, a very respected man in the community. People see them walking on the beach together. He's very protective of her. The image crashed into Damien's mind with the force of a physical blow. Isabel, his Isabel, walking on a beach with another man. A kind man. A doctor who had helped her when he, her husband, had thrown her away. The irony was so cruel, so perfectly just, that it almost broke him. He had created a vacuum, and the world, in its fairness, had filled it with someone better. The investigator continued. And Mr. Sterling, one more thing. She gave birth 3 days ago. To a boy. Mother and son are both healthy. Damien sank to the floor, the phone clattering from his hand. A son. He had a son. A son who had been born, not in a state-of-the-art private hospital suite, but in a small town by the sea. A son whose first days were being watched over not by his father, but by a kind stranger. He had been so obsessed with uncovering Chloe's lie that he hadn't fully grasped the reality of Isabel's truth. He wasn't just trying to find his wronged wife anymore. He was trying to find his son. He booked a car. He didn't care about Dr. Ben Carter. He didn't care about anything but getting there. He had to see her. He had to see his son. He had to try, however futilely, to beg for a forgiveness. he knew he would never deserve. The 5-hour drive to Porthleven was a pilgrimage of shame. The Rolls-Royce, a symbol of his insulated power, felt alien as it navigated the narrow, salt-sprayed lanes of Cornwall. This was a different world, one grounded in earth and sea, not glass and steel. He found the address the investigator had provided, a modest, whitewashed cottage overlooking the harbour. Its small garden blooming with defiant coastal flowers. It radiated a warmth his mansion had never possessed. His heart hammered against his ribs as he walked to the front door. How could "I'm sorry" ever be enough to bridge the chasm he had created? Before his knuckles could even touch the wood, the door opened. A man with kind, steady eyes stood before him, his posture calm but protective. It was clearly Dr. Ben Carter. "Can I help you?" Ben asked, his voice even. "I'm Damien Sterling." Damien said the name, tasting like ash in his mouth. "I'm here to see Isabel." "She's resting," Ben replied, a wall of quiet defense. "She's been through a great deal. The unspoken accusation because of you was deafening." "Please," Damien begged, stripped of his usual authority. "I need to see my son." From within the cottage, a voice stronger and calmer than he remembered cut through the tension. "It's all right, Ben. Let him in." Damien stepped inside. The cottage was cozy and filled with light. There in an armchair sat Isabel. The haunted look he had last seen was gone, replaced by a profound, serene strength. She looked tired but at peace, and nestled in her arms, wrapped in a soft blue blanket, was a tiny, sleeping baby boy. Damien's breath caught in his throat. He stared at his son, a perfect living testament to the truth he had so cruelly denied. "He's beautiful," Damien whispered the words, thick with unshed tears. "His name is Leo," Isabel said. Her voice was level, holding neither warmth nor malice. It was the voice of a woman who had weathered his storm and reached a distant shore. "Isabel, Damien started his prepared speeches, crumbling into dust. "I know everything. About Chloe, the lies. I was a blind, arrogant fool. What I did to you is unforgivable. I threw you out. I called you a liar. It was monstrous. I don't expect forgiveness. I just had to see him. To see you. I'll give you anything, the divorce, the house, my entire fortune. Just please let me be his father." Isabel looked down at the sleeping baby, then back at Damien, her eyes clear and assessing. "You think money fixes this? That's always been your answer, hasn't it? Settle the account and move on." She stood up slowly, her movements deliberate. "When you threw me out, you didn't just abandon me. You abandoned him. The stress of what you did sent me into premature labor. Ben found me collapsed in a store. He saved my life," she said, her voice dropping, each word a carefully placed stone. "He saved our son's life." Damien visibly flinched, the truth of her words a physical blow. "So no Damien," she continued, standing directly before him. "You don't get to just walk in here and be his father. Now that is a title you have to earn. You don't get to buy your way back." Her gaze was unflinching. "If you want to be in Leo's life, it will be on my terms. You will sell the mansion. I never want to see it again. You will establish an independently managed trust for Leo, and you will get professional help. You will find out why you destroy what is good and real in your life. You will do that work." She paused, letting the verdict settle. "But us. There is no us anymore. You broke that beyond repair. That is a consequence you have to accept." Her expression softened, not with forgiveness, but with a final heartbreaking finality. She held the bundled baby out to him. "Now," she said quietly, "if you are ready, you may hold your son." With trembling hands, Damien Sterling reached out and took the small, warm weight of his child into his arms. Looking down at the tiny, perfect face, the master of a global empire broke down and wept not for the life he had lost, but for the immense, terrifying journey of redemption. He was only just beginning. And so Damien Sterling's gilded world was shattered not by a market crash, but by the quiet, unshakable power of the truth. He learned the hardest lesson of all, that trust once broken cannot be bought back. It must be rebuilt painstakingly, with actions, not words. The story of Damien, Isabel, and Chloe isn't just about a mistress's lie. It's about the devastating consequences of choosing arrogance over intuition, and the incredible resilience of a woman who found her own strength when the world tried to take everything from her. What does redemption truly look like? Is it ever fully possible? Isabel has given Damien a path, but the journey is his to walk alone. This story is a powerful reminder that the most valuable things in life, love, trust, and family, are also the most fragile. If this story moved you, if it made you think, please give this video a like and share it with someone who appreciates a story of consequence and resilience. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more dramatic stories that explore the depths of human nature. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an update, and let us know in the comments. Do you think Isabel made the right choice? Can Damien ever truly earn his way back? We can't wait to hear from you. What would you do if the love of your life, the woman carrying your first child, vanished into thin air? For Liam Peterson, this wasn't a hypothetical question. One Tuesday morning, his pregnant wife, Elena, was there, her laughter echoing in their sunlit kitchen. By Tuesday afternoon, she was gone. No note, no call, no trace. The police had no leads, his friends had no answers, and his heart was shattering into a million pieces. He spent every waking second searching, praying, and descending into a personal hell. And then 10 days later, in the checkout line of a grocery store, he saw her. Not in the flesh, but on the cover of a magazine. And the woman staring back at him was not the wife he knew. The scent of brewing coffee and toasted sourdough was the metronome of Liam Peterson's mornings. It was a rhythm of domestic bliss he had come to cherish more than anything. On this particular Tuesday, the 7th of October, the sun streamed through the kitchen window of their charming suburban home in Maple Creek, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air like tiny golden fairies. At the center of this idyllic scene was Elena, his Elena. 7 months pregnant, she had a glow that seemed to generate its own light. Her dark hair was loosely tied up, a few stray curls framing a face that was the very definition of contentment. She was humming a soft, tuneless melody as she carefully spread avocado on a slice of toast. Liam leaned against the doorframe, a quiet observer of his perfect world. They'd met 4 years ago at a small independent bookstore, a meet-cute so cliché they often laughed about it. He, an architect who appreciated clean lines and solid foundations, had been instantly captivated by her, a freelance illustrator whose life was a vibrant tapestry of color and imagination. She grounded his ambition. He structured her dreams. Staring again, "Mr. Peterson," she said without turning around, her voice warm and laced with amusement. "Guilty as charged, Mrs. Peterson," he replied, walking over and wrapping his arms around her from behind. He rested his hands on her swollen belly, feeling the gentle flutter of their daughter-to-be. "Just admiring my two favorite girls." Elena leaned back against his chest with a contented sigh. "Well, your second favorite girl is demanding avocado toast, and possibly pickles," he chuckled, kissing the top of her head. "Whatever the princess wants, the princess gets." Their morning unfolded with the comfortable ease of a long-practiced routine. They talked about the nursery, debating once again between a soft lavender and a warm daffodil yellow for the walls. They discussed his upcoming presentation for a new city library project and her deadline for a children's book. It was all so wonderfully, beautifully normal. At 8:30 a.m., Liam kissed her goodbye. It was a lingering kiss, full of unspoken promises and the shared excitement for their future. "I'll be home by 6, he said. "Don't overdo it today, okay? Let the pencils rest." "I promise," she said, her eyes sparkling. "I have a date with a trashy novel and a foot bath." "Love you." "Love you more," he whispered, before grabbing his briefcase and heading out the door. The day at the firm was grueling. Liam was neck-deep in blueprints and zoning regulations, his mind a whirlwind of cantilevered beams and structural loads. He texted Elena around noon. "Thinking of you. How's the foot bath?" Usually she'd reply within minutes with a witty comment or a cute emoji. But by 1 p.m. there was no reply. He shrugged it off. She was probably napping. Pregnancy tired her out more than she let on. By 4 p.m., a small, cold knot of unease began to form in his stomach. He called her phone. It went straight to voicemail. That was unusual. Elena was meticulous about keeping her phone charged. He tried again at 4:30. Voicemail. And again at 5:00. Voicemail. The unease was now a frantic, buzzing anxiety. He packed his things in a rush, giving his boss a clipped apology about a family matter, and sped home. The drive, usually a 25-minute buffer to decompress, was a torment of red lights and slow drivers, each second stretching into an eternity. He pulled into the driveway and saw her car, the sensible blue sedan, parked in its usual spot. A wave of relief washed over him. She was home. Maybe her phone died, and she fell asleep listening to that audiobook she loved. He chided himself for being so paranoid. But the moment he stepped inside, the silence of the house hit him like a physical blow. It wasn't a peaceful quiet. It was an empty, hollow silence. "Lena," he called out, his voice unnaturally loud. "Honey, I'm home." No answer. He walked through the house. In the kitchen, her half-eaten slice of avocado toast sat on the counter, now brown and unappetizing. A mug of tea, cold to the touch, was beside it. In the living room, a novel lay face down on the sofa, its spine creased at page 47. The bath upstairs was dry. The bed was perfectly made. Everything was in its place, except for her. He checked the closets. Her clothes were there. He checked the bathroom. Her toiletries were lined up neatly. Her purse was gone. Her keys were gone. And her phone was presumably with her. He called her best friend, Sarah. "Hey, Sarah, it's Liam. Is Elena with you by any chance?" "Liam?" "No, I haven't spoken to her since yesterday. We were supposed to grab lunch tomorrow. Is everything okay?" Sarah's cheerful voice was jarring against his rising panic. "Yeah, I can't reach her," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. He called her mom, who lived 2 states away. She hadn't heard from Elena either, but promised to call if she did, her voice tightening with a mother's worry. By 7 p.m. the sun had set, and the house was shrouded in shadows that seemed to mock his happy memories from that morning. The beautiful normality had shattered, replaced by a terrifying void. He called the Maple Creek Police Department. The officer on the phone, a man named Henderson, was professionally calm, but sounded weary. He took down the details. Yes, she was 28. Yes, 7 months pregnant. No history of mental illness. No, they hadn't had a fight. The conversation had been perfect. Their life was perfect. As Liam said the words, they tasted like ash in his mouth. "Sir, it's only been a few hours," Officer Henderson said. "It's common for people to be out of touch for a bit. She might have gone to the mall and her phone died. We can't officially file a missing person report until 24 hours have passed." "But she's pregnant." Liam's voice cracked, the control he was clinging to finally snapping. "She wouldn't just disappear. Something is wrong." The officer's platitudes about staying calm and waiting were meaningless noise. Liam hung up the phone, his hand trembling. He stood in the center of their living room, surrounded by the life they had built together, the photos on the mantel, the lopsided clay pot he'd made in a pottery class. She'd dragged him to the soft throw blanket on the armchair where she loved to read. Every object was a testament to her presence, and every object screamed of her absence. He spent the night sitting on the sofa, staring at the front door, willing it to open. He didn't sleep. He just waited, listening to the deafening silence, while the perfect world he'd woken up in that morning crumbled around him. Tuesday had come and gone, and with it, so had Eleanor. The first 72 hours were a blur of bureaucratic nightmares and gut-wrenching fear. A missing person report was officially filed. Detective Isabella Rossi, a woman with sharp, empathetic eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, was assigned to the case. She sat with Liam in his now sterile living room, her pen scratching against a notepad. The sound an unwelcome intrusion into the silence. "Mr. Peterson," she began, her voice gentle but firm. "I need you to tell me everything. Does Elena have any ex-boyfriends who might be unstable? Any family disputes? Financial troubles? Any secrets she might have kept from you?" Liam shook his head, his mind feeling like a fog. "No. Nothing. We were happy. Her parents passed away when she was young. She was raised by an aunt who died a few years ago. She has no other family that I know of. No exes to speak of. Our finances are fine. We have no secrets." Detective Rossi's gaze lingered on him for a moment, an unreadable expression on her face. "In my experience, Mr. Peterson, everyone has secrets." The words stung. He and Elena prided themselves on their honesty. They were a team, a partnership built on a foundation of trust. The idea that she could have a secret life was not just unbelievable, it was a betrayal of everything he thought they had. The police did their due diligence. They put out an alert, checked local hospitals and morgues, a word that made Liam physically ill, and began tracking her credit card and phone activity. The results were maddening. Her credit card hadn't been used since she bought groceries, 2 days before she disappeared. Her phone's last ping was near their house at 9:15 a.m. on Tuesday, right after he'd left for work. Then it had been turned off. It was as if she had simply stepped out of her life and vanished from the face of the earth. Liam's friend Mark became his anchor. He brought over food that Liam didn't eat, sat with him in silence when he couldn't speak, and fielded the endless calls from concerned friends. "We'll find her, man," Mark would say, clapping him on the shoulder. "She's a smart woman. There has to be a simple explanation." But as the days bled into one another, the hope for a simple explanation faded, replaced by a dark, creeping dread. Liam couldn't work. He couldn't sleep. He spent his hours pacing the house, calling Elena's voicemail, just to hear her voice, the cheerful recording a cruel mockery of his reality. He printed out flyers with her smiling face and plastered them all over town, his hands shaking as he taped her image to telephone poles and coffee shop windows. The woman on the flyer looked happy, carefree. She was a stranger to the hollowed-out man he was becoming. By day 5, Liam felt he was losing his mind. The police had nothing new. The news cycle had already moved on. He was alone with his grief and the million unanswered questions. He decided he had to do something, anything other than wait. He began his own investigation, tearing their house apart in a desperate search for a clue, a hint, anything he might have missed. He started in the attic, a space filled with forgotten holiday decorations and sentimental junk. After hours of sifting through dusty boxes, he found it. Tucked away in the corner beneath a stack of old college textbooks was a small, locked wooden box. He didn't recognize it. It was old, made of dark cherry wood, with an intricate silver latch. His heart hammered against his ribs. He took it downstairs, and with a screwdriver from his toolbox, pried the lock open. The contents stole the air from his lungs. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, was a collection of items that made no sense. There was a stack of letters, tied with a silk ribbon, written in a spidery script he didn't recognize. There was a heavy, ornate silver locket, but when he opened it, it was empty. And underneath it all, there was a passport. It wasn't Elena's. The photo showed a younger version of his wife, maybe 16 or 17. Her hair was longer, and her smile was strained, but it was unmistakably her. The name on the passport, however, was not Elena Miller. It was Camilla Sinclair. Liam stared at the name, his mind refusing to process it. Camilla Sinclair. Who was Camilla Sinclair? He fumbled through the passport. Place of birth, Greenwich, Connecticut. He'd always believed she was from a small town in Oregon, like she'd told him. It was part of her charm, the small-town girl who'd made a new life for herself. His hands shaking, he picked up the letters. They were all addressed to Camilla and signed by someone named Carmen. The letters spoke of a life of unimaginable wealth and suffocating expectations. They mentioned galas, charity balls, and business trips to Zurich. One line leaped out at him. "I know you had to leave, Ellie. Father is becoming more unbearable than ever. He's furious, of course. He says you've disgraced the Sinclair name, but I think you're the bravest person I know. Please be safe out there." Father. Disgraced the Sinclair name. A wave of vertigo washed over Liam. He slumped into a chair, the passport and letters spread out on the table before him. Elena Miller, the freelance illustrator, the woman who loved farmers' markets and hiking trails, who claimed to have no family, was a lie. Her name was Camilla Sinclair, and she had run away from a life of privilege, from a controlling father, from a world he knew nothing about. Detective Rossi's words echoed in his head. Everyone has secrets. He had been married to a ghost, a carefully constructed identity. The woman he loved, the woman carrying his child, was a complete stranger. The foundation of his entire world, the bedrock of his love and trust, had just been pulverized into dust. The question shifted. It was no longer just, "Where is she?" It was now, and more terrifyingly, "Who is she?" And was her past the reason she was gone? Had this life she'd run from finally caught up with her? The fear for her safety was now compounded by a chilling sense of betrayal. He looked at the photo on their mantelpiece, the two of them on their wedding day, beaming. Had she been Camilla Sinclair then? Was any of it real? He felt a cold, hard anger beginning to bloom in the pit of his stomach, an anger at her for her deception, and an even greater terror for what that deception might have cost them. The discovery of the wooden box plunged Liam into a new dimension of hell. For 10 days he had been grieving a lost wife. Now he was grappling with the ghost of a woman he had never truly known. He didn't tell the police about the box, not yet. How could he? How could he explain that the woman they were searching for, Elena Miller, didn't technically exist? He felt like a fool, a man duped by the most elaborate and intimate of lies. His waking hours were now consumed by a frantic, obsessive search for Camilla Sinclair. He typed the name into his search engine, and the world that opened up on his screen was staggering. Sinclair. The name wasn't just a name. It was a brand, an empire. Sinclair Global, a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate with interests in shipping technology and real estate. The articles were endless, painting a portrait of one of America's most powerful and reclusive families, and at its head was the patriarch Alistair Sinclair, a man whose face, even in corporate headshots, was a mask of cold, ruthless ambition. Then he found her. There were older articles, society pages from years ago featuring a teenage Camilla Sinclair at charity events, standing stiffly beside her father. In every photo, she had the same strained smile he'd seen in the passport picture. The articles described her as the elusive Sinclair heiress. And then, about 8 years ago, she had simply dropped off the society pages. There was speculation of her studying abroad, of a falling out with her family. But then nothing. She had vanished from their world just as completely as she had vanished from his. He had married a runaway heiress, the woman who clipped coupons and insisted on buying second-hand baby clothes was the sole heir to a fortune that could buy half of Maple Creek. The irony was so bitter it made him want to laugh and scream at the same time. His emotions were a tangled, chaotic mess. He felt betrayed, yes, but beneath the anger and confusion, the all-consuming love he had for her was still there now, twisted into a knot of terror. This wasn't just a woman who had lied about her name. This was a woman who had run from a powerful, controlling father. Had Alistair Sinclair found her? Was that why she was gone? Was she a prisoner in a gilded cage somewhere in Greenwich, Connecticut? On the 10th day of her disappearance, Liam forced himself to leave the house. He was out of coffee milk and any semblance of hope. The fluorescent lights of the local grocery store felt harsh and alien. He moved through the aisles like a zombie, grabbing items without seeing them. It was at the checkout counter, while waiting behind a woman meticulously counting out coupons, that his world stopped for the second time in as many weeks. His eyes drifted to the magazine rack. It was a sea of celebrity gossip and home design glosses. But one cover stood out, its bold, stark lettering demanding attention. It was the latest issue of Forbes, and on the cover was a face he knew better than his own. It was Elena, but it wasn't. The woman on the cover was an ice queen. Her dark hair was styled in a severe, elegant chignon. She wore a tailored power suit of navy blue that screamed money and authority. Her makeup was flawless, her expression imperious and cold. The soft, laughing eyes he loved were now hard, calculating chips of obsidian. She looked directly into the camera, and there was not a trace of the warm, gentle illustrator he had married. She was every inch the powerful, corporate titan. She was Camilla Sinclair. Liam's breath hitched in his throat. His heart felt like it had been dropped from a great height. He fumbled for the magazine, his hands trembling so badly he could barely grasp it. The headline in bold yellow font read, "The Prodigal Daughter Returns." Camilla Sinclair takes the helm at Sinclair. Global, after father's sudden retirement. He read the words over and over, but they wouldn't compute. Sudden retirement, takes the helm. He scanned the subheadline. After an 8-year hiatus, the enigmatic heiress returns to claim her birthright, stunning Wall Street and ushering in a new era for the multi-billion-dollar empire. A wave of nausea and disbelief crashed over him. This wasn't a kidnapping. This wasn't a woman taken against her will. This was a choice. She had left him. She had walked out of their quiet, happy life, out of their shared future, and stepped back into the world she had supposedly fled. She had abandoned him and their unborn child to become a CEO. The cashier cleared her throat. "Sir, are you going to pay for that?" Liam stared at her blankly, the magazine clutched in his white-knuckled fist. He threw a $20 bill on the counter, not waiting for the change, and stumbled out of the store, the automatic doors sliding open to a world that was now irrevocably different. He sat in his car in the parking lot, the magazine open on the passenger seat. He read the article, his vision blurring with tears of rage and heartbreak. The article was a masterpiece of corporate PR. It spoke of Alistair Sinclair's health issues, forcing a sudden departure. It quoted Camilla in crisp, impersonal sound bites about honoring her father's legacy and steering the company into the future. There was no mention of a husband, no mention of a pregnancy. The Camilla Sinclair on those glossy pages was a woman unburdened by a past in Maple Creek. The loving wife, the excited mother-to-be, the trashy novels, the footbaths. It was all a lie. A game. A role she had been playing for 4 years. Had she grown tired of playing the part of a normal person? Had the allure of power and wealth been too strong to resist? The love he felt for her curdled into a raw, agonizing poison. The grief for a missing person was clean compared to this. This was a profound, soul-deep betrayal. She hadn't been taken from him. She had left him. Willingly, without a word, without a single glance back. He drove home, the image of her cold, powerful face on the magazine cover burned into his mind. He walked into the nursery they had been planning, with its half-assembled crib and stack of baby books. The daffodil yellow paint samples on the wall seemed to mock him. He had been building a foundation for a family, while she had been waiting for the right time to detonate it. He collapsed onto the floor, the magazine falling open beside him. He wasn't just a husband searching for his missing wife anymore. He was a man whose entire reality had been a fraud, whose future had been stolen by a woman who was a stranger. And as he stared at the face of Camilla Sinclair, a new feeling began to crystallize through the pain, a cold, hard resolve. He wasn't going to let this go. He deserved answers. And more importantly, his unborn daughter deserved to know why her mother had chosen a boardroom over her. He was going to find her, not to bring her home, but to confront the woman on the cover of the magazine. He was going to confront Camilla Sinclair. The next 48 hours were a maelstrom of calculated action, fueled by a toxic cocktail of fury and heartbreak. The image of Camilla Sinclair on the cover of Forbes was a constant, searing presence in Liam's mind. He cancelled Elena's missing person report. The conversation with Detective Rossi was brief and excruciating. "You've found her." Rossi's voice was sharp with professional interest. You could say that Liam replied, his own voice hollow. "She's fine." It was a misunderstanding, a family matter. He could feel the detective's skepticism through the phone line. "Mr. Peterson, if you're in any trouble, I'm not. Thank you for your help, detective." He hung up before she could ask any more questions, before he had to voice the humiliating truth. "My wife didn't get it kidnapped. She just got a promotion." He booked a one-way train ticket to New York City. He packed a small bag with a few changes of clothes, the wooden box with its damning contents, and the Forbes magazine, which he now treated like a piece of evidence in the trial of his life. He called Mark and told him a version of the truth that Eleanor had left to deal with a family crisis she'd kept secret, and he was going to get answers. Mark's concern was palpable. "Liam, are you sure this is a good idea? Going after her like this? This sounds big. Maybe you should talk to a lawyer. I'm not looking for a legal battle." "Mark," Liam said, his jaw tight. "I'm looking for my wife. Or whoever she is. I need to look her in the eye and ask her why." The train ride was a long, lonely journey through the fading autumn landscapes. Liam stared out the window, but he didn't see the passing towns or the fiery colors of the trees. He saw Elena's face, not the cold mask from the magazine, but the real, laughing face he thought he knew. He saw her sipping hot chocolate by the fire, her eyes crinkling at the corners. He saw her asleep beside him, one hand resting protectively on her belly. Was any of that real emotion, or was it just part of her performance? The question was a form of torture. New York City was an assault on the senses, a stark contrast to the quiet grief of Maple Creek. The noise, the crowds, the towering buildings, it all felt oppressive. According to the magazine article, the Sinclair Global Headquarters was a sleek glass and steel skyscraper in the heart of Manhattan. That was his destination. Dressed in his best suit, hoping to project an air of confidence he absolutely did not feel, Liam walked into the lobby of the Sinclair Global Tower. It was less a lobby and more a cathedral of corporate power. Marble floors gleamed under recessed lighting, and a massive abstract sculpture dominated the center of the space. The air hummed with a quiet, intimidating energy. He approached the monolithic reception desk, where a woman with a headset and an unnervingly perfect smile sat. "Can I help you?" "Yes, Liam," said his voice, steadier than he expected. "I'm here to see Camilla Sinclair." The receptionist's smile didn't falter, but her eyes did a quick, dismissive scan of him. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but it's a personal matter." "My name is Liam Peterson. If you could just tell her I'm here, Miss Sinclair's schedule is managed by her executive assistant. She does not take unscheduled meetings. If you'd like to submit a request—" She pointed towards a tablet on the desk. Liam knew it was a dead end, a corporate black hole designed to make people like him disappear. "Look," he said, leaning in slightly, his voice dropping. "I understand. But this is extremely important. It's urgent. I am her husband." The word hung in the air between them. The receptionist's professional veneer finally cracked. A flicker of surprise, maybe even pity, crossed her face. She typed something into her computer, her brow furrowed. After a moment, she looked up, her expression once again cool and impassive. "Ms. Sinclair has no husband on record," she stated flatly. "Security. We have a situation at the front desk." Before Liam could even process the words, two burly men in sharp suits materialized at his elbows. They were polite, but immovable. "Sir, you're going to have to come with us," one of them said, his voice a low rumble. They escorted him not out the front door, but to a small windowless office off the lobby. A man was waiting for them, older and impeccably dressed, with silver hair and the weary eyes of someone who solved problems for the very rich. He introduced himself as Arthur Vance, head of security for Sinclair Global. Mr. Peterson Vance began, his tone calm and dismissive. "I understand you're making some claims." "I'm not making claims." Liam shot back, his frustration boiling over. "I am Camilla Sinclair's husband. We live in Maple Creek. She is 7 months pregnant with my child." Vance didn't even blink. He slid a folder across the polished table towards Liam. "I think you'll find you are mistaken." Liam opened the folder. Inside was a single document, a copy of an annulment decree filed in the state of New York and dated 3 days ago. It cited fraud and misrepresentation as the grounds. His marriage to Elena Miller, no to Camilla Sinclair, had been legally erased. Signed at the bottom was a signature he knew as well as his own, Camilla Sinclair. He stared at the document, the black and white letters blurring into a meaningless grey. She hadn't just left him. She had obliterated their entire life together. She had wiped him from her history as easily as deleting a file. "This is insane," he whispered. "This is impossible." "What's impossible, Mr. Paul?" Peterson Vance said coolly, "is that you will ever get within 100 feet of Ms. Sinclair again. She has returned to her life, a life that does not include you. I strongly advise you to go back to Maple Creek and forget any of this ever happened. For your own good." The veiled threat was unmistakable. These people, this family, they didn't just solve problems, they made them disappear. He was being erased. Defeated Liam was escorted out a side entrance and deposited onto the bustling Manhattan sidewalk. The city suddenly felt 10 times larger, a concrete jungle where he was completely out of his depth. He was just an architect, a man who built things. How could he possibly fight against people who had the power to unmake his entire reality with a piece of paper? He wandered aimlessly for hours until he found himself in a small park. He slumped onto a bench, the annulment papers clutched in his hand. He was nothing to her, a mistake to be corrected, a secret to be buried. But what about their baby? The child was a Sinclair heir, whether Camilla acknowledged it or not. Was that what this was all about? Did they want his child, but not him? The thought sent a fresh wave of ice through his veins. He looked at the wooden box sitting beside him on the bench. There was one last thing inside. He hadn't focused on the letters. The letters from Carmen. "I think you're the bravest person I know." If Camilla had a sister, someone who seemed to be on her side 8 years ago, then maybe, just maybe, he had one last desperate card to play. He had to find Carmen Sinclair. She might be his only way through the fortress her family had built around the woman he once called his wife. Finding Carmen Sinclair was like trying to catch smoke. She held no official position at Sinclair Global and maintained a meticulously private life, a stark contrast to her newly resurfaced sister. After 2 days of fruitless searching online, Liam found a single breadcrumb, a mention in a high society charity blog from 6 months prior. It named Carmen Sinclair as a patron of a specific art gallery in Soho that specialized in emerging artists. It was a long shot, but it was the only one he had. He spent the next day sitting in a coffee shop across the street from the gallery, a place so chic and minimalist it made him feel clumsy and out of place. He watched as the city's elite, draped in designer clothes, drifted in and out. Just as he was about to give up, he saw her. A woman with the same dark hair as Eleanor, but cut into a stylish, sharp bob, stepped out of a black town car. She had the same fine-boned features, but where Camilla's face in the magazine had been hard and cold, this woman's was etched with a sort of weary elegance. Liam's heart pounded. He grabbed his bag and crossed the street, his mind racing. He couldn't confront her in public. He followed her into the gallery, keeping his distance as she spoke with the owner. He waited until she moved to a quieter section at the back, admiring a large, chaotic, abstract painting. He took a deep breath and approached her. Carmen Sinclair. She turned her eyes so much like Eleanor's, but guarded appraising him coolly. "I'm sorry. Do I know you? No. My name is Liam Peterson." He watched her face for any sign of recognition. There was none. "I was married to your sister." The change in her expression was immediate and dramatic. The polite disinterest vanished, replaced by a flash of panic, then a carefully constructed mask of indifference. She glanced around the gallery. "I think you're mistaken," she said, her voice a low, clipped whisper. "I don't know what you're talking about." She turned to walk away, but Liam stepped in her path. "Please," he said, his voice raw with desperation. "Her name was Elena Miller when I knew her. She's pregnant. She disappeared from our home nearly 2 weeks ago, and then I saw her on the cover of Forbes. I just want to know why. I just want to know if she's okay." Carmen stared at him, her composure cracking. He could see a war of emotions in her eyes, fear, pity, and something else. Frustration. She sighed, a sound of profound exhaustion. "Not here," she muttered. "Meet me in 1 hour. Washington Square Park by the Arch. Come alone. If I see anyone with you, I'm gone." She swept past him and out of the gallery without another word. An hour later, Liam was waiting, his nerves frayed. Carmen arrived wearing sunglasses despite the overcast sky. She led him to a secluded bench away from the main crowds. "You're either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid to come to New York," she began, not looking at him. "You need to go home, Mr. Peterson. Forget you ever knew her. Her name is Eleanor Liam," insisted. "And I can't. She's carrying my child." Carmen finally turned to face him, and the pain in her eyes was genuine. "You think she had a choice? You think she just decided she preferred a corner office to your quiet little life in— what did the report say? Maple Creek?" "The report?" Liam asked, confused. "My father has files on everyone," she said bitterly. "He's known about you for months. He was just waiting for the right time to make his move." Liam felt a chill that had nothing to do with the autumn air. "What move? What are you talking about?" This was it. The twist. The reason that went beyond a simple, selfish choice. Carmen took a deep, shuddering breath and began to unravel the story, her voice low and urgent. Elena ran away 8 years ago because our father, Alistair, is a monster. Not in a dramatic movie villain way, in a quiet, soul-destroying way. He controls everything and everyone. He tried to force her into a marriage with the son of a business rival to secure a merger. She refused. So she ran. She created Elena Miller, and for the first time in her life she was happy. Genuinely happy. She told me all about you in secret emails. You were her entire world. Then why Liam's voice was barely a whisper. Why would she leave? Because he found her. Carmen said, her voice cracking. About 3 months ago, one of his private investigators finally tracked her down. But Alistair didn't storm in and drag her back. He's more clever than that. He waited. He learned she was pregnant. And that's when he saw his opportunity. She paused, looking at Liam, as if to gauge if he could handle what was coming next. The baby changed everything. To him, that baby isn't a grandchild. It's a Sinclair. It's the next heir to the empire. He couldn't have a Sinclair heir, raised outside the family, in obscurity with a nobody. She said the word without malice, simply stating a fact as her father would see it. His health really is failing, she continued. He needs a successor. His plan was always for Camilla to take over. When he found out she was pregnant, he saw the perfect leverage. He sent his man, Arthur Vance, to see her. I met Vance, Liam said grimly. Of course you did. Carmen scoffed. Vance delivered the ultimatum. It was very simple. Camilla was to come home, erase her life as Elena Miller, and take her place as CEO of Sinclair Global. She would raise her child within the family with all the resources and legacy that entails. And if she refused, Liam asked, though he already feared the answer. Carmen's eyes were filled with a deep, sorrowful pity. If she refused, he would have you destroyed. Not physically at first. He'd start with your career. An anonymous tip about structural flaws in your library project. A lawsuit from a disgruntled former client funded by him. He would bankrupt you, ruin your reputation, make you unemployable. And if you still tried to stay in her life, if you fought him, well, Alistair believes that tragic accidents can be arranged. The world tilted on its axis. Liam finally understood. The cold woman on the magazine cover wasn't a betrayal. It was a sacrifice. She hadn't left him because she didn't love him. She had left him to save him. The annulment, the cold silence, the corporate fortress. It was all designed to push him away, to make him hate her, to make him give up and go back to his life where he would be safe. She was a prisoner, and she was trying to protect her jailer's only target. She's trapped, Liam, said the realization dawning on him. Completely, Carmen confirmed. She's under 24/7 surveillance. Her every move is monitored. She's living in the family penthouse, a beautiful prison. She's playing the part of the dutiful daughter because she believes it's the only way to keep you alive. All the anger and bitterness Liam had harbored for days evaporated, replaced by a wave of love so fierce it almost brought him to his knees. His Elena was still in there, buried beneath the Ice Queen persona of Camilla Sinclair. She was fighting for him in the only way she knew how. I'm not leaving, Liam, said a newfound determination solidifying in his chest. I'm not letting him win. Carmen looked at him, a flicker of something, admiration perhaps, in her eyes. My father has never lost Mr. Peterson. He has more money and power than you can possibly imagine. I don't care, Liam said, his voice hard as steel. She's my wife. That's my child. What he has doesn't matter. There has to be a way to get her out. And you're going to help me. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact. For the first time, Carmen Sinclair allowed herself a small, grim smile. The runaway heiress had a husband who was a fighter. Maybe, just maybe, Alistair Sinclair had finally met his match. Forging an alliance with Carmen, Liam devised an audacious, dangerous plan. It was clear they couldn't outmuscle or outspend Alistair Sinclair. They had to outthink him. Their only chance was to get a confession to get Alistair on tape, admitting to his threats. The stage for this high-stakes gamble was the Sinclair Foundation annual gala. A glittering media event where Camilla would be on public display, and where Alistair, surrounded by his power, would feel untouchable. The plan was fraught with risk. Carmen secured Liam a position on the catering staff, making him a ghost in a black waiter's uniform. He moved through the dazzling ballroom of the Pierre Hotel, his heart hammering against his ribs, balancing a tray of champagne he could barely afford. Then across the sea of tuxedos and gowns he saw her. Standing beside her father, Camilla was a vision in an emerald gown that accentuated her pregnancy. She looked regal, beautiful, and utterly captive. For a fraction of a second, their eyes met. He saw a flicker of shock, of pure terror, before she tore her gaze away. Her mask of cold composure snapping back into place. But he knew she had seen him. The trap was set. Playing her part, a flustered Carmen approached her father. "Father, we have a problem," she whispered urgently. "That man, Camilla's husband, he's here. I saw him with the staff. He's threatening to go to the press tonight." Alistair's face, a placid mask of philanthropy moments before, darkened into a thundercloud of fury. His eyes scanned the room with predatory intensity. He had been assured the architect was a problem that had been solved. "Vance," he hissed to his head of security. "Find the man. Quietly. Bring him to my private study. Come upstairs. I will deal with this insect myself." Moments later, Liam felt a firm hand on his arm. He was escorted through service hallways and up a private elevator to a lavish suite. The study was a fortress of wealth and power, lined with dark wood and the smell of old money. Alistair Sinclair stood by the window. A small man, radiating an immense and chilling aura of authority. Camilla was near the fireplace, pale and trembling. So Alistair began turning his cold eyes on Liam. "You're the architect, the little man who thought he could steal my daughter." "I didn't steal anyone," Liam said, his voice miraculously steady as he discreetly activated the digital recorder in his pocket. "We fell in love. We built a life you threatened to destroy." Alistair let out a dry, contemptuous laugh. "Love. You build buildings, Mr. Peterson. I build empires. My daughter has a duty. My grandchild has a destiny. You are a footnote, an obstacle that is being removed. By threatening my life, by holding my wife and child hostage to your ambition." Liam pressed his gaze, locked on Camilla's, willing her to see his resolve. "I did what was necessary to protect the legacy of this family." Alistair stated his arrogance, making him careless. Camilla understood. She made the sensible choice. She chose her child's future over a fleeting romance. "Tell him, Camilla." All eyes turned to her. This was the moment on which everything hinged. Camilla looked from her father's demanding glare to Liam's hopeful face. The practiced mask crumbled, revealing the terrified but determined woman beneath. Her voice, though trembling, was clear and strong. "He's right, Liam. I made my choice." She took a step towards him, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "I choose you, and I choose our daughter. I'm done being afraid of him." She turned to face her father, her chin high. "It's over, father. You've lost." Alistair's face contorted with a rage that was terrifying to behold. "You foolish girl. You would throw away everything for this. This nothing. I will ruin him." "No," said a new voice from the doorway. Carmen stood there, her phone held up its camera lens, shining like a beacon of rebellion. "She won't." Alistair froze, his eyes darting between his two defiant daughters, the architect he had so thoroughly underestimated, and the two recording devices that sealed his defeat. He was trapped. The master manipulator had been cornered by a love he could never comprehend, and a loyalty he had never earned. The air in the opulent study was thick with the silence of a fallen king. Alistair Sinclair stood defeated, his power rendered useless by a simple audio file and the courage of the people he had tried to break. "We are leaving," Liam announced, his voice ringing with authority. He looked directly at the stunned head of security, Arthur Vance. "My wife, her sister, and me. You will not stop us. An audio file of Mr. Sinclair admitting to coercion and making threats against my life is in the hands of a third party. If we are not safely away from here in 20 minutes, that file will be sent to every major news outlet in the country. It wasn't a gamble, it was checkmate." Vance gave a curt, almost imperceptible nod. His job was damage control, and this was the only way. They walked out of the room, leaving Alistair alone with the ruins of his control. The long journey through the hotel's service corridors was a silent, tense march toward freedom. When they finally emerged from a side door into the cool Manhattan night, Camilla took a deep, shuddering breath and collapsed into Liam's arms. They were out. Mark's unassuming rental car was their chariot of freedom, whisking them away from the city of glass towers and gilded cages. The journey back to Maple Creek was a blur of quiet relief. Camilla slept against Liam's shoulder, a profound exhaustion finally claiming her. They never released the recording. It was their insurance policy, a silent weapon held in reserve. With Carmen acting as a reluctant but firm intermediary, the terms of their liberation were negotiated. Alistair Sinclair, facing the utter ruin of his reputation, had no choice but to concede. Camilla Sinclair officially took a permanent medical leave of absence, citing complications with her pregnancy. The annulment was quietly reversed and replaced by a swift, settled divorce, leaving Elena Miller a free and independent woman. A substantial trust fund was established for her and the baby, not as a gift, but as a severance package from the family she was finally escaping. Life in Maple Creek did not simply snap back to normal. It settled into something new, something more honest. The trauma of the last few weeks left scars, but within the walls of their home, Liam and Elena began to truly rebuild their foundation. She told him everything about her suffocating childhood, and his last vestiges of anger at her deception melted away into an overwhelming empathy for the girl who had to run away just to breathe. He told her about his 10 days of hell searching for a woman who didn't exist, and she wept, finally able to grieve for the pain she was forced to inflict to save him from something far worse. 2 months later, Olivia Rose Peterson was born healthy and beautiful, with her father's calm eyes and her mother's dark hair. As Liam held his daughter looking at Elena, who was glowing with a genuine, unforced happiness, he knew their life would never be simple. The name Sinclair would always be a ghost in their past. But it was just a story now, not a threat. Their own story. The one they were writing together was about a family in a small house with walls painted a warm, hopeful daffodil yellow, a foundation that had been tested, shattered, and then rebuilt stronger and more true than ever before. The story of Liam and Elena is a harrowing reminder that sometimes the people we love most hold secrets we can barely imagine. It's a journey that started with a perfect morning and descended into a nightmare of corporate power and devastating betrayal. But ultimately, it's a story about the incredible resilience of love. It shows us that truth, when fought for, can topple empires, and that the strongest foundations are not built with money or power, but with courage, sacrifice, and an unbreakable trust. Their battle was fought not in a boardroom, but in the heart, and it's a victory for anyone who has ever felt small against an insurmountable force. If their incredible story of love against all odds moved you, please take a moment to hit that like button to let us know. Share this video with someone who appreciates a story of true strength and resilience. And most importantly, if you want to hear more unforgettable real-life dramas like this one, make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Thank you for listening.